The detention field hummed with a frequency that made Vorkath's tertiary stomach churn. He'd been a galactic enforcement officer for 16 cycles now, and he'd never seen anything quite like the human female standing in the center of the containment grid. She was smiling. Not the nervous twitch of a cornered prey species. Not the aggressive baring of teeth his xenobiology courses had warned about. This was something else entirely. Something that made the dorsal spines along his neck flatten in what his instructor would have called a professionally inappropriate survival response. "You're making a mistake," the human said. Her voice carried that peculiar Earth accent, the one from the northern continental mass. What did they call it? American? The database had 17,000 regional variants, and Vorkath had stopped trying to memorize them after the first 100. Negative. Vorkath's partner, a Quellan named Durst, gestured with 3 of his primary manipulators. "You have been observed violating Sector 7 Ordinance 44B, subsection 12. Unauthorized operation of a Class 9 vessel within restricted orbital space. You will comply with arrest protocols or face escalated containment measures." The human, who had identified herself as Maya Reeves during the initial stop, tilted her head in that unnervingly flexible way her species could manage. "Escalated containment measures. That's adorable. You hear that, Ratchet?" A voice crackled through her communications implant. "I hear it, Captain. Want me to file that under threats we're ignoring today? Or start a new category called Adorable Bureaucratic Nonsense?" Vorkath's tail lashed once, twice. The human had a crew. Of course she had a crew. The initial scans had shown the vessel was running with minimal life signs, but humans were famous for their shielding modifications. His supervisor was going to file 17 different reprimands over this. "Your associate will also be detained for processing," Vorkath said, trying to maintain the authoritative tone that had earned him commendations in his last 3 evaluations. "Please power down all defensive systems and prepare for boarding." Maya Reeves laughed, not a small chuckle, not a nervous giggle. A full, genuine laugh that echoed through the detention field and somehow made it feel smaller, more cramped, like the entire universe had suddenly contracted around Vorkath's career prospects. Okay. She held up her hands in what the cultural database listed as a peaceable gesture, context-dependent, potentially sarcastic. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to give you boys 1 free shot, 1 strike. You get to take your best swing, use your fanciest gadget, throw your biggest, baddest enforcement protocol at me." She paused. The smile grew wider. "Choose wisely." Earst shifted his weight across all 4 of his lower appendages. "This is not a negotiation, human. You do not dictate terms to galactic enforcement." "Sure I do. I'm dictating them right now. You're listening, aren't you?" Maya crossed her arms. "Look, I've had a really long week. Hauled cargo through the Belric's expanse, got shot at by pirates twice, had to repair my jump drive with spare parts and optimism, and I haven't had real coffee in 6 days. 6 days. So I'm feeling generous. 1 shot. Make it count." Vorkath accessed his tactical overlay. The human's biosigns were steady. Too steady. Her heart rate hadn't elevated, no perspiration indicators, no pupil dilation. Either she was chemically suppressing her fear responses, or she genuinely believed she could handle whatever they deployed. Both options were concerning. "Earst," Vorkath said through their private channel. "Threat assessment?" "Inconclusive. She's either delusional or extremely dangerous. Possibly both. Humans have documented history of successful outcomes, despite statistically impossible odds." "That's the understatement of the cycle," Vorkath muttered. He'd read the incident reports. The Battle of Kelvan's Reach, where a single human cruiser had held off an entire Vorkath assault fleet. The miners' revolt on Quintara 7, where 12 human engineers had reprogrammed an entire planetary defense grid using nothing but hand tools and what they called spite. The famous words of Admiral Liu before the siege of Proxima, "I'm not locked in here with you, you're locked in here with me." His species had a saying, "Never corner a predator unless you're prepared to become prey." Humans, he was learning, had elevated that concept to an art form. "Final warning," Vorkath said, initiating the neural disruptor sequence. It was non-lethal, completely safe for 97% of known species, caused temporary paralysis, mild disorientation, and a sensation the manual described as profoundly unpleasant. The human's smile didn't falter. "That's your choice? Really?" Maya sighed. "Ratchet, they're going with the neural disruptor." "Shocking lack of creativity, Captain. Right? You'd think after all those reports, all those case studies, they'd maybe try something new." Vorkath fired. The neural disruptor discharged with its characteristic whine pulse crack. The energy matrix enveloped Maya Reeves in a cascade of precisely calibrated electromagnetic interference designed to overwhelm synaptic functions and induce immediate unconsciousness. She blinked. Huh, that tickled. Vorkath's primary heart stopped. His secondary heart compensated, flooding his system with combat stimulants that his species had evolved for exactly this kind of "oh no, I've made a terrible mistake" scenario. "Impossible," Erst breathed. "The disruptor is rated for everything except humans who've been running illegal neural augmentation suites." Maya tapped the side of her head. "Yeah, about that. Spent 2 years in the outer colonies. You know what you learn out there? How to not die. The neural augments were expensive, uncomfortable, and probably voided my health insurance. But they were worth every credit when dealing with folks who think non-lethal means the same thing as effective." She took a step forward. The containment field should have stopped her. Should have. The word was doing a lot of heavy lifting in Vorkath's increasingly panicked assessment of the situation. Maya placed her hand against the shimmering barrier. Sparks cascaded down the energy matrix. Warning indicators flooded Vorkath's helmet display. "See? Here's the thing about containment fields," Maya said, her voice taking on the tone of someone explaining basic mathematics to a particularly slow student. "They're designed to stop people from getting out. Not so great at stopping someone who doesn't want to leave but just wants to prove a point." The field destabilized, collapsed, reformed, collapsed again. "Ratchet," Maya said, "remember that favor you owed me? The one from the Kessler Station incident or the one from when I accidentally sold your spare oxygen recycler?" "The Kessler one." "Consider it called in, Captain." The enforcement vessel shuddered. Vorkath's tactical display erupted with alerts, hull breach warnings, system compromises. His ship's AI, usually calm and professional, was broadcasting what could only be described as digital screaming. "What are you doing to my ship?" Vorkath demanded. "Oh, that's not me. That's Ratchet. He's a mechanical genius. Also possibly 3 sentient nanite colonies in a trench coat pretending to be one entity. We don't ask questions because he makes the engines run really well." Another shudder. The lights flickered. "Captain Reeves," a new voice said through the ship's intercom. Vorkath recognized it. Commander Thrells, his supervisor, the person who was absolutely going to have 17 kinds of documentation about this incident. "This is Enforcement Command. Stand down immediately." "No, I must insist. And I must insist that you all recognize that I filed my flight plan properly, paid all my docking fees, and have not actually violated Ordinance 44B because, and I quote from the legal text, authorized civilian vessels operating under registered commercial licenses are permitted access to designated orbital lanes during standard operational hours. Maya pulled out a data tablet. Want to guess what time I entered the orbital space? Silence. That's what I thought. Someone didn't check the timestamp on their scanner data. Someone assumed that because I was human, I was automatically breaking the law. And someone is about to learn a very expensive lesson about proper procedure. Vorkath felt his career prospects crumbling in real time. However, Maya continued, I'm not unreasonable. You gave me your one shot. You failed. Now I'm going to give you all a choice. You can apologize, let me go about my business, and we can all pretend this was a routine stop where nothing interesting happened. Or you can escalate, and I can introduce you to the 17 lawyers I have on retainer who specialize in wrongful detention suits. 17 lawyers? Erst whispered. Humans are litigious, Vorkath replied. It's in all the briefings. I didn't read that far. Of course you didn't. Commander Thrells cleared his vocal chambers. Captain Reeves, I apologize for the inconvenience. You are free to proceed with your scheduled activities. Officer Vorkath will be receiving additional training on proper timestamp verification protocols. There it is. Maya deactivated her tablet. The smile returned, somehow more terrifying now that Vorkath knew what it meant. See? Cooperation. It's not so hard. She walked past Vorkath, stopped, turned. Quick tip, officer. Next time you stop a human, maybe check their service record first. I spent 8 years in the Earth Coalition Marines before I went private. Special Operations, 4th Division. We had a motto. We are the danger you didn't see coming. Food for thought. She strode toward the airlock where her ship was docked. Paused again. Oh, and Vorkath? The neural disruptor thing? That was cute. But if you'd actually read the xenobiology reports on human nervous systems, you'd know we've got redundancies built into our spinal columns. Evolution is weird like that. Makes us really hard to shut down without causing permanent damage, which is why most species go for kinetic solutions instead of trying to scramble our brains. Noted, Vorkath managed. Good talk. Stay safe out there. The airlock cycled. Maya Reeves disappeared into her vessel. The ship, a modified Starhawk-class freighter, that definitely had more weapons than the registration indicated, detached with the smooth precision of a craft that had made thousands of similar exits. Vorkath watched it accelerate away, its engines burning with efficiency that suggested very illegal modifications. Erst, he said quietly. Yes? We never speak of this again. Agreed. Commander Thrells' voice crackled through the intercom. Vorkath. My office. Immediately. Acknowledged. As the enforcement vessel turned back toward the station, Vorkath accessed the human's service record. The file was massive. Decorated. Classified sections that required clearances he didn't have. Combat citations that included phrases like single-handedly defended the position against overwhelming force, and creative application of explosive devices in confined spaces. There was a note at the bottom of the file, a personal comment from some Earth Coalition admiral. Captain Reeves is the kind of officer who makes the enemy wish they'd stayed in bed. Recommend extreme caution if encountered in civilian capacity. She doesn't follow the rules because she helped write most of them. Vorkath closed the file. Humans, he decided, were absolutely terrifying. Not because of their strength, or their weapons, or their technology, but because they had this infuriating habit of being right when they were supposed to be wrong, of winning when they were supposed to lose, of smiling when anyone else would be screaming. And the worst part? The absolute worst part? They did it all while being completely, insufferably, undeniably polite about it. His species had a new saying now, spreading through the enforcement ranks like a viral meme. Don't mess with humans unless you want to end up as a cautionary tale in their training videos. Vorkath suspected he'd just become Exhibit 1. Commander Thrells was waiting in his office, all 6 of his eyes focused on Vorkath with the intensity of someone about to ruin an entire career. Sit. Vorkath sat. Explain. And so Vorkath explained. The stop. The ordnance. The timestamp he hadn't checked because his shift was ending, and he'd been tired and maybe, just maybe, a little bit eager to pad his arrest statistics for the quarterly review. Commander Thrells listened. His expressions cycled through anger, disappointment, resignation, and what might have been grudging respect. You encountered Maya Reeves, Thrells said when Vorkath finished. The Maya Reeves, and you tried to arrest her with a neural disruptor. Yes, sir. Do you understand how monumentally foolish that was? I'm developing a comprehensive understanding, sir. Thrells leaned back in his chair. It creaked under his bulk. There's a betting pool in the command center. How long before someone tried to arrest Reeves during her scheduled stop here? You just made Lieutenant Kexral very wealthy. There was a betting pool? She stops here every 6 months, uses our orbital space for jump calculations, never causes problems, never breaks regulations, and every single time, some new officer who doesn't read the updates tries to arrest her. Thrells pulled up a holographic display. You're number 47. Vorkath felt his tail go completely limp. However, Thrells continued, you're also the first one to actually deploy a neural disruptor. That shows initiative. Misguided, poorly researched, potentially career-ending initiative. But initiative nonetheless. Sir? You're suspended for 2 cycles. During that time, you will complete comprehensive training on human psychology, neurology, and proper timestamp verification. You will also write a detailed report on this incident for the training database. Make it educational. Make it humiliating. Make sure every rookie who reads it understands why checking your data is more important than meeting your quota. Yes, sir. Dismissed. Vorkath stood, turned to leave. Officer? Sir? Commander Thrells almost smiled. Between you and me? The look on your face when she asked if that tickled was worth the paperwork. I've got it saved. I'm showing it at the next training conference. Wonderful, sir. Vorkath left the office, his career damaged but not destroyed, his pride thoroughly trampled, and his understanding of humans fundamentally altered. Somewhere out in the black, Maya Reeves was probably laughing about the whole thing, probably telling the story to her crew, probably adding another chapter to the growing legend of human unpredictability that kept the galaxy's enforcement officers awake at night. And Vorkath? Vorkath was going to read every single human-related briefing in the database. Twice. Possibly 3 times. Because next time, there wouldn't be a next time. He was never, ever stopping another human vessel without checking absolutely everything first. His species had a saying about learning from mistakes. The burnt appendage learns to avoid fire. Vorkath's appendages felt very, very burnt. 3 months later, Vorkath found himself staring at another human vessel on his scanner display. His dorsal spines immediately flattened. No, he said to the universe. Absolutely not. Contact approaching on Vector 7-9er, his new partner announced. Officer Kelris was a Thanian, all crystallized logic and zero sense of humor. perfect for keeping Vorkath from making impulsive decisions. Standard merchant configuration. Transponder identifies as the Broken Promise. Registry Earth Coalition. Captain listed as, don't say it, Marcus Webb. Vorkath exhaled through both respiratory systems. Not Maya Reeves. That was good. That was fine. He could handle a different human. Except his training modules had been very specific. There was no such thing as a standard human. They were all varying degrees of dangerous, creative, and absolutely impossible to predict. Running background check, Kelris said. Her crystalline fingers danced across the console. Captain Webb, former Earth Navy, demolitions expert, decorated service record, currently operates independent cargo runs through contested space. Notes indicate he has a tendency toward what humans call sarcasm and should not be engaged in verbal confrontation without proper preparation. What kind of preparation? It doesn't specify, just says to be prepared. Vorkath pulled up the vessel's flight plan, checked the timestamps, triple-checked them, verified the orbital permissions, cross-referenced with current regulations. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. This is Enforcement Vessel 17 to Broken Promise, Vorkath said through the communications array. Routine safety inspection. Please maintain current trajectory and prepare for scan. The response came immediately. Male voice, rough around the edges, with an accent Vorkath's translator struggled to place. Copy that, Enforcement. Fair warning, though. I'm hauling medical supplies to the colony on Persex Minor. They've got a quarantine situation. Time-sensitive cargo. Medical supplies. Quarantine. Time-sensitive. All perfectly reasonable. All potentially true. All setting off every alarm in Vorkath's recently re-educated survival instincts. Understood, Captain Webb. This will be brief. Take your time, officer. I've got nowhere to be except saving lives and preventing a plague outbreak. No pressure. Kelris looked at Vorkath. That was sarcasm. I know what sarcasm is now, Vorkath muttered. I took an entire course on it. 6 weeks of listening to recorded human conversations and identifying tonal inflections. I got certified. How did you do? Passed with adequate marks. The instructor said I showed improvement, but still tended to take statements at face value. The scan completed. Cargo hold registered medical supplies. Life signs showed 1 human, standard biosignature. No weapon signatures above civilian-grade self-defense equipment. Navigation logs matched the filed flight plan exactly. Everything checked out, which meant something was absolutely wrong. Captain Webb, Vorkath said carefully, your documentation appears to be in order. However, I'm required to verify cargo authenticity given the nature of your shipment. Silence. Then a laugh. Not Maya Reeves's full-bodied amusement, but something darker. Tired. You want to board my ship and inspect medical supplies during a time-critical delivery run. Supplies that are keeping people alive. Because regulations. Regulations exist for safety, Captain. Right. Safety. Tell you what, officer. I'm going to make you the same offer my friend Maya makes when enforcement gets twitchy. 1 shot. You can board my ship, waste 20 minutes of critical time checking serial numbers on vaccine containers, and explain to the families on Persex Minor why their kids died 3 hours before the medicine arrived. Or you can trust that someone who spent 15 years defusing unexploded ordnance in active war zones probably knows how to file cargo paperwork correctly. Vorkath felt his tail beginning to lash. You know Captain Reeves? Know her? She's the one who taught me the 1-shot rule. Said it worked beautifully on some enforcement officer named Vorkath, who tried to neural disrupt her into compliance. Of course. Of course they knew each other. Probably shared stories over whatever humans drank. Probably laughed about the stupid aliens who kept making the same mistakes. Maya talks about me? You're famous, buddy. Case study number 1 in the updated enforcement training modules. What not to do when encountering humans. You've got your own section. Kelris made a sound that her species used to express second-hand embarrassment. Vorkath accessed his tactical overlay, ran probability scenarios. Option 1. Board the vessel. Verify everything. Probably find nothing wrong. Definitely waste critical time. Possibly cause civilian casualties. Absolutely guarantee another humiliating report. Option 2. Trust the process. Let the human through. Maybe get reprimanded for insufficient verification, but keep his conscience clear. The training modules had been explicit. Humans valued results over procedure. They respected competence over compliance. And they had extremely long memories for both kindness and stupidity. Captain Webb, Vorkath said, your cargo is cleared. Proceed to Persex Minor with all due speed. Transmitting priority clearance codes for the approach corridor. Another pause. Longer this time. You're letting me go? Just like that? Your documentation is proper. Your mission is legitimate. And I recently completed extensive training on temporal logistics and the ethical implications of bureaucratic delays during crisis situations. Vorkath pulled up his personal log. Safe travels, Captain. I hope the children on Persex Minor recover quickly. Well, damn. Webb's voice had shifted. Less sarcasm, more genuine surprise. Thanks, officer. Seriously. I'll make sure Maya hears you're one of the good ones. The Broken Promise's engines flared. The ship accelerated toward the jump point, already transmitting gratitude to the Persex Minor Colony Authority. Kelris turned all 3 of her optical sensors toward Vorkath. That was either extremely wise or catastrophically foolish. With humans, I'm learning those are often the same thing. Commander Thrells will want a report. Commander Thrells can have a report. A short one that says we verified documentation, assessed risk, and made an appropriate judgment call that prioritized civilian welfare over procedural formality. You've changed. I got educated. There's a difference. Vorkath settled back into his station. Humans don't respect authority. They respect competence. They don't fear consequences. They calculate acceptable costs. And they absolutely will not forgive you for valuing paperwork over people. The Broken Promise is jumping, Kelris announced. Clean exit. No anomalies. Vorkath watched the ship disappear from his sensors. Somewhere on Persex Minor, children would receive medicine. Lives would be saved. And Marcus Webb would tell Maya Reeves that not every enforcement officer was a statistics-obsessed fool. His communicator chirped. Private channel. Commander Thrells. Vorkath, I just reviewed your encounter log. Sir, you let a human cargo hauler through without physical inspection. Yes, sir. Documentation was proper. Mission was time-critical. Risk assessment indicated low probability of violation. Silence. Vorkath counted his heartbeats, both hearts, alternating rhythm. Good work, officer. That's exactly the kind of judgment we want. You're learning. Thank you, sir. Although I should mention that Maya Reeves just transmitted a message to Station Command. Says to tell Officer Vorkath that he's getting better and she's almost proud. Also says the next time she's in sector, she'll buy you a drink and explain why humans are so weird about rules. I'm not sure I want that drink, sir. Take it anyway. Human friendship is valuable, also terrifying, but mostly valuable. Thrells disconnected. Vorkath stared at his console, at the empty space where the Broken Promise had been. at the vast galaxy that seemed somehow smaller and more complicated than it had 3 months ago. "Kelris," he said, "do you know what the hardest part of this job is? Maintaining proper documentation standards? No, it's understanding that sometimes the rules exist to protect people, and sometimes people need protection from the rules. Humans figured that out a long time ago. The rest of us are still catching up. That's surprisingly philosophical. I've been reading human literature. They have this concept called civil disobedience, breaking rules to serve a higher purpose. It's either genius or insanity. Which do you think it is?" "Yes." Their shift continued. 3 more vessels, standard checks, no incidents. Vorkath verified timestamps, checked documentation, and only briefly considered that his career had somehow become about preventing himself from being an obstacle rather than enforcing the law. 2 weeks later, a package arrived at the enforcement station, addressed to Officer Vorkath, 4th Division, Orbital Enforcement. Inside was a bottle. Earth beverage. Whiskey, the label said. Single malt, aged 20 years, from a place called Scotland. The note was handwritten. Actual ink on actual paper. "Vorkath, heard you let Marcus through when it mattered. That takes guts and brains, which is a rare combination in enforcement. This bottle is the good stuff. Don't drink it alone. Share it with someone who appreciates that doing the right thing is harder than following orders. You're going to go far, officer. Try not to let the bureaucracy kill that spark. Stay dangerous. Maya Reeves." Vorkath held the bottle carefully. His species didn't metabolize alcohol the same way humans did, but the gesture mattered more than the contents. Kelris examined the package. "That's a 200-credit bottle." "Is it?" "Minimum, possibly more. Earth whiskey is extremely valuable in the outer sectors. Humans guard it jealously. She sent me a valuable gift for doing my job correctly." "She sent you a valuable gift for thinking like a human, which is apparently what good enforcement requires now." Vorkath placed the bottle in his personal locker, next to his commendations, next to the data chip containing every humiliating second of his encounter with Maya Reeves that Commander Thrells had promised to show at conferences. "The galaxy is changing," he said quietly. "Humans are everywhere now. In our stations, on our worlds, flying through our space. We can either keep treating them like problems to be solved, or we can learn from them. And what are we learning? That rules without wisdom are just chains. That procedure without purpose is just theater. And that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is exactly what you're supposed to do, regardless of who gets hurt." Kelris processed this. Her species thought in logical frameworks, binary decisions, clear hierarchies. "That's very human of you," she said finally. "Thank you." "I'm not sure it was a compliment. I'm taking it as one anyway." The shift ended. Vorkath filed his reports, updated his logs, and prepared for another cycle of preventing himself from becoming a cautionary tale. His communicator chirped. "Message from the Persex Minor Colony Authority. Official gratitude for the priority clearance. Casualties avoided. Children recovering. Families grateful." Attached was a short video. Human children, various ages, holding signs. "Thank you, Officer Vorkath." Their parents in the background, human and alien alike, smiling. Vorkath saved the video, sent a copy to Commander Thrells with the note. "This is why we do the job right." The response came immediately. "Damn right, officer. Damn right." Somewhere in the black, Maya Reeves was probably planning her next cargo run. Marcus Webb was probably delivering another critical shipment. Ratchet was probably reverse engineering something that shouldn't be possible. And Vorkath? Vorkath was learning that humans didn't break rules because they were chaotic. They broke rules because they had a better understanding of what rules were supposed to accomplish. His species would adapt, learn, grow, or they'd keep trying to neural disrupt humans and wondering why it never worked. Vorkath knew which option he preferred, and he had an entire bottle of very expensive whiskey to remind him that sometimes the universe rewarded thinking over obedience. He smiled. It felt strange on his face. Humans did that a lot, he'd noticed. Smiled when things were difficult, laughed when things were dangerous, found joy in the spaces between disaster and triumph. Maybe that was the real lesson. Not that humans were dangerous, or unpredictable, or impossible to control, but that they'd figured out how to be free, while everyone else was still reading the manual on proper freedom-requesting procedures. His communicator chirped again. Another vessel approaching. Another scan required. Vorkath checked the registry. Human vessel. Of course. But this time he wasn't worried. This time he knew exactly what to do. Verify the timestamps. Check the documentation. Treat them like people instead of statistics. And if they offered him one free shot, he'd choose wisely, which meant choosing not to shoot at all. The galaxy was big. Humans were everywhere. And Vorkath was finally starting to understand what that meant. It meant the future was going to be interesting, complicated, probably loud, but never, ever boring. And somehow, despite everything, that seemed perfectly fine.